video, and if you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Emma. I am the one that runs this YouTube channel as well as the written blog and the Instagram blog Tea and God, and I am here today with the second video in our second relationship slash as a person before getting into a relationship, however you want to call that series. And before I start today's video, I just want to say that I will be only doing one chapter today instead of doing a chapter of a book like I normally do, and then also doing a psalm of the day. But we do still have our tea of the day. So our tea of the day today is in this little fancy smancy teacup. This is one of my favorites. It was one of the first two that I bought, which I think is probably why it's one of my favorites. But I am drinking the Stash Breakfast in Paris tea. This is the second time I've drank this one on the channel, but I really like it, and I just bought a box, which it was kind of ironic because I bought a box of Breakfast in Paris tea, and I'm reading a book that is like part of the time set in Paris right now, which was a coincidence, but anyways, I do want to preface this video, though, and say that I am going to be sharing a little bit more personal stuff than I normally do, and that this video is, I'm going to open with that, and then I haven't decided how I'm going to format it yet, but we will be reading from an English Standard Version Bible like how I normally do, and I have been wanting to ask you guys if you guys would prefer a different translation, because I usually just do the ESV because this is the one that's always popular in sermons online, and then in Bible journaling type people usually use an English Standard Version Bible. I personally like to use a variety of different translations. I have a New King James Version Study Bible, which has been really awesome so far, but then I also have New Living Translation, the Message Translation for one of my churches a couple years ago recommended that we got one, so I did, and I just have kept it since then. And then I also have this one. And if anybody is curious about this specific Bible, this is a journaling Bible like Crossway Books. It's the English Standard Version, like I said, and it has the room in the margins for you to do journaling. I obviously have not done any journaling in this chapter. Let me flip back to, I've been reading, I might actually do a little bit of a psalm today. I might have lied. I've been reading Psalms 119 lately, and I love Psalms 119, so like to show you an example of what you can do in a journaling Bible is like write the notes on the side and stuff, but let's see. I am going to still do a Psalm of the Day. I changed my mind. So our Psalm of the Day for today is Psalm 119. I'm going to just read, I'm not even going to try and say the heading, but it looks like, I don't know how to say it, but it's verses 113 through 120, and it says, I hate the double-minded, but I love your law. You are my hiding place and my shield. I hope in your word. Depart from me, you evildoers, that I may keep the commandments of my God. Uphold me according to your promise, that I may live, and let me not be put to shame in my hope. Hold me up, that I may be safe, and have regard for your statutes continually. You spurn all who go astray from your statutes, for their cunning is in vain. All the wicked of the earth you discard like dross. Therefore I love your testimonies. My flesh trembles for fear of you, and I am afraid of your judgments. And I think that the important takeaways for this particular portion of this chapter are to remember to love his words. We are called as Christians to read our Bibles, to eat our spiritual food here, and it's reminding us that we need to truly love the Word of God and cherish it and spend time learning it and not just learning about it. Just like we need to spend time learning who God is and not just what He's done in the past. It's also important for us to remember how verse 114 reminds us that He is all we need. We don't need other people in our lives. We don't need a job or the newest whatever, but we need God in our lives, and that's the only thing we truly cannot live without. I also think that it's important how verse 115 reminds us to not live amongst evil. Now, that being said, I do think that it is important to reach out to, I do think that it's important for us to, be a light to those that are living in darkness, but your closest friends should not be non-Christians, because it's much easier to pull someone back down out of Christianity than to lift somebody else up. So that being said, it is really important to make sure you are surrounding yourself with fellow believers. It's also important that verses 116 and 117 reminds us that everything that we do is up to God. That it says that I may live, that I may be safe. That the key here is that God doesn't owe us anything. This is all by His will and out of His goodness and His love for us that He does these things, but this is not something we just deserve because we are who we are. And I also think it's important in verse 19 that it says, all the wicked of the earth you discard. It's important for us to remember as Christians that while we may see evil in the world, we are not the judgers. God is the ultimate judge. And so ultimately, we need to let people who are in the wrong be judged by God and not be judged by us. I mean, obviously, if there's something going wrong in the church because of being led wrong or something like that, that needs to be dealt with. But like, what I'm saying is that you can't condemn your fellow believer because, oh, well, they believe in this, but don't believe in this, or yada yada. Or you can't condemn someone that you know outside the church just because you think that they're a bad person, because realistically, we all are bad people. We've all sinned. We've all screwed up. And it's only by the grace of God that any of us live. I also think that verse 120 is an important reminder to us that we really need to be living in fear of God, because we often, I think, forget how mighty and wonderful and powerful He is. And it's when we forget that we start to see our lives fall apart. So I think I've been trying to figure out how I want to format this. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the chapter we're going to focus on today, and then I'm going to share a little and then go back and forth. I think that's just going to make the most sense in my head, and with editing, I think that would make the most sense to have a fairly smoothly flowing video. But our chapter for today, for our reading in this series, is going to be 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And if you grew up in church, you know that this is the love chapter. Everybody always jokes about that, but this chapter is extremely important, and it's only 13 verses, but this is one that I think we really need to focus on when we are looking towards either getting into a relationship or taking the next step in a relationship into marriage. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, starting in verse 1, says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver my body up to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoings, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, as I have been fully known. So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love." I'm going to set my Bible here so that I can look at it for reference. But I just want to share a little bit of my testimony before starting this series, because I am admittedly quite young. But that being said, I feel like I have a perspective on the topic of love that a lot of people of my generation don't have, because many people that live in the younger generations don't really know what love is, and we have been sold a definition of love by our society and by our culture that really isn't love at all. And that's why I wanted to go back to this chapter that establishes to us what love is, and that's why I kind of wanted to take a deeper dive into this one, and I'm actually quite nervous to film this, so we shall see. But I also want to preface this in case the person I'm talking about in this video does see this. I have no hard feelings. I have completely forgiven the person, I guess is what I should say, and nothing that I talk about is from a place of anger or hatred or anything like that, and I don't want anybody that I know that knows the person to think that they're a bad person after this, because, they're not. It's just that we were not a good pair together. We weren't compatible on the most foundational level, and that's really where a lot of these other problems came from, I think. So, that all being said, I want to dive in and tell you about what happened in my own life, in my own relationships, and yes, so this will be really fun. But today, a year ago, I got engaged, and it is January 20th when I am filming this, so it's going to be a little bit delayed for you guys. But a year ago today, I got engaged. I was in my senior year of high school, but I actually stopped going to high school my sophomore year and was doing college full time. He had graduated the year before. We had been dating for almost a year. The 21st would have been our year anniversary, but he proposed on the 20th. So to give you an idea, basically a year of dating at the point that we got engaged. And obviously not engaged or married now, so it's fun. But I don't know. I realized that when speaking about relationships, it can be really easy for us to, when we hear sermons on it, think, well, they don't know what it's really like being single, because you know what? Like, they're married. They've been married for years. They met their person when they were 14. They don't know what it's like to go through ups and downs of romantic relationships and have breakups and all that fun stuff that comes with heartbreak. And I think that oftentimes we forget that people have stories behind the scenes that we don't always share. And I know that for myself, I have touched on this topic a handful of times, but I really wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive into this before going into this series, because I have gone through a lot. But anyways, so to paint a picture of leading up to when he and I started dating, I'm going to call him Bob for lack of a better name, so Bobby. Yeah. But I always use Bob as a name. I'm so sorry if anybody named Bob watches these, but anyways, so to paint you a picture of what my life looked like leading up into this relationship starting, romantically speaking at least, or on that topic of life. How do I explain this? So there was a guy that we had kind of been interested in each other and stuff my sophomore year of high school, and then my junior year he asked me out, and then we both knew going into it, I think, that we would never really work as a couple because we wanted different things out of life, but we were both like, oh, it's fine, we may as well just go on a date to see what happens, and we decided to just be friends afterwards. But there was still some part of me that was like, well, I just have to do better than that, I guess, because I've always been the type that was like, I'm going to find my true love in high school, and we're going to get married, and it's going to be great. And now, realistically, that is not the what happens 99.9% of the time, I would say. I remember when I was 14, the guy that I was not dating, long story, his parents met when they were 14 and 15, I want to say. And so I was like, this is going to be great. We're just going to be just like them. And then obviously we weren't, but when we're younger, we have these conceptions of love that we develop as we grow up, and sometimes those have to be completely thrown out the window in order for us to see what God actually has for us. So, fast forward into my junior year of high school in January. I downloaded this app called Yubo, which is a place to meet people as a teenager, because frankly, when you're in Running Start and you never went to public high school, you have a very small limited friend group that changes every 10 weeks. So I downloaded the app trying to meet new friends and whatever, and then I met this guy on there who was Bobby. And then I jokingly invited Bob down to come to church at our church on a Sunday when my parents and I were driving different cars, because I didn't want them to know that I was going on a date with Bob, because I didn't know Bob. And it wasn't really a date when we met. I was like, oh, we're just going to be friends. But then that we went on a date for 8 hours or something, and just were talking about life and stuff, and we started dating from there. So throughout the relationship, things progressed, and 3 months in, which it was really ironic because 3 months in is quite early to, well, I don't know, quite early, but also quite not. I think quite early at the age that we were to think that we were going to marry each other, but it was from that point on that I was fully convinced that this was the person God had for me, solely because he wanted to marry me. So that was in my head, oh, well, this must mean that this is the person that God has for me. So we, the night of his senior prom, he told me that, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get married someday. This is going to be great. And so that was 2018, and what month is prom? April. It was on Earth Day. So, love that I know that. Anyways, and so that the relationship progressed, and there were things that I saw in the relationship that should have been warning signs to me. And again, this is when I want to say that time changes people, and I, again, like I said at the beginning, I have no hard feelings towards him at this point, and I really didn't at the time. I was more just mad at myself for not seeing and paying attention to the things sooner, because a lot of my friends were kind of noticing things, but either they didn't say anything, or they would say something and I would immediately push back. But there were things he had struggled with anger issues when he was younger, but during the relationship, there were times where I saw the anger flare up, but I always tried to convince myself and downplay what was happening, or tell myself, oh, well, this will never turn on me. This will never turn on me. It'll be okay. Like, he's working through it. It'll be fine. But, like, there was, at one point, we were at his house. He was still living with his parents at this point, because I want to say it was before he graduated. But regardless, so we were at his parents' house, and his mom was having him put in a new curtain rod, or something new with the windows, and it was like a curtain rod or some new part of the curtain rod, I don't know. But she told him that, and he was like really mad about it because he had something else he wanted to do that day or something, and so she left, and when she left, he started like swearing her out and stuff, and like throwing things around the room, and I was sitting there like I didn't really know what to do or how to handle it because I didn't want to make it worse, so I just kind of sat there folding laundry, pretending like nothing was wrong. And then there were a few other things throughout the relationship that were kind of red flags, but the other time before breaking it off that I really recognized that his anger had not gotten much better, or like it was still there is what I should say, because it probably had improved from when he was younger, but because, you know, we struggle more with emotions as we grow up, and then once we get older, we can figure out how to deal with them more. But there was another time, and with the house that we were going to be renting, which this was another red flag to me, is that I was never consulted for things. He just would do things without telling me. And not all the time, but like it would happen enough that it was kind of not a good thing. But, he had decided to rent a house that was more money to rent than we really should have been spending on rent at the time because of our income. But he sent me pictures of this house and was like, hey, like, what do you think of this one? And I'm sitting here, or he sent me pictures of the kitchen, asking what I thought about the kitchen, because I like to cook and stuff. And so I was like, oh, like, it's not that bad, you know, like, but I'm also sitting here like, this is not a cute house. Like, this is like, no. But, you know, I'm trying to be nice, like, oh, it's not terrible, haha. And then he tells me that he started renting it. And at that point, I got irritated because when you are in a relationship with someone, and this is something that I'm saying so that you guys can take note of this when you are in relationships with other people, you need to both be communicating with each other, especially on big life things like moving or jobs and stuff like that. You really need to consult with each other. And so we had a decent, I think our first fight probably, or at least our first notable one, was over that issue because I was not consulted at all and he'd already signed the papers and everything pretty much. So it was like I had no say, and it was something that I should have had some type of say in, considering that we were going to be spouses like 3 or 4 months after that. So that happened, and after that happened, he was working the night shift, and so I went to bed because it was nighttime when he told me about it, since he was, you know, sleeping during the day, working nights. And when he got to work, he was still really angry about it and was like punching and denting a bunch of the lockers at work, and then had to go back and fix those. So that was another red flag to me because he had not been working at this place of employment for that long, but then also to do that at any place of employment is not good. But then also to tell me about it, well, I guess that's kind of good that he at least owned up to the fact that he did it, but also it's not, like, I was kind of shocked when he told me about it because I wouldn't have thought it was that bad, or that he was that mad about it, or like, not that mad about it, but like, you know, that it got that far, I guess. So, progressing after that point, but then, so it was kind of at that point that I started to see other things in the relationship that shouldn't have been happening, which I will come back to the chapter, I promise, but I kind of think it's just going to be easier to do both and then go back into the chapter. So, just for my own sanity, but, then within the relationship, I started to see other things that were kind of weird. Like, now basically, he was a kind of jealous person, which, like, I can understand jealousy to a point. I do admittedly have a lot of male friends, and so I can understand how that could be something that would induce jealousy in a guy, and that is something I'm working on having more female friends than just male. But that being said, it was to the point where, like, and let me back up. So with my male friends, a lot of them are either in relationships or are now married, or, you know, like, we've known each other for long enough that, like, we think dating each other would be gross because we're like siblings. But anyways, it was to the point with Bob that if I spent too much time out with anybody, whether it was a male friend, which is more understandable, but like even girlfriends or like my girl cousin, if I spent too much time out with them on a day when we were supposed to hang out, he would get mad because I was supposed to hang out with him that day and not with them. Now, that is also somewhat understandable, and I think that's why I justified this behavior, because we did live about an hour and a half away from each other, so it was more so if I was going up, we would, or if he was coming down, like we would spend the whole day together just because we don't see each other throughout the week. But still, it was to the point where if I wanted to like meet up with my bridesmaids or my cousin who was my maid of honor or anything like that, like during the wedding planning process, if I spent too much time with them, he would get irritated, and it was like, this is kind of weird. But again, I would justify it to myself because, oh, like we don't see each other that much, so this is normal behavior, or like, oh, it's a guy friend, so like it's fine that he's, you know, feeling this way because he's justified in feeling that way because he's also a guy. But like, really, if your partner trusts you, which they should trust you, they would trust that you aren't going to do anything stupid and vice versa. So that being said, that was another thing. But I went to a youth conference last year in March at my church, and it was really then that I began to feel like deep somewhere inside of me that God was telling me this was not the right thing and that I needed to get out of it, and that it was not the right thing and not the right thing and not the right thing. And, you know, our brain tries to justify the stupid things we do. And so I'm sitting there like, oh, this isn't God talking to me. This is just me getting cold feet. Like, this is normal a couple months before the wedding. Like, it's fine. It's fine. And I kept pushing it down as I was seeing more and more of these yellow and red flags. So then it comes to be towards the end of May, and my aunt texts me, and it's my aunt on my stepdad's side. So my aunt on his side lives up in Alaska. I don't live in Alaska, so like, let me back up. So she lives up in Alaska, and she lives in like the rural parts of Alaska. So I've seen her maybe like 10 times, if not less than that, like in person since my mom and my stepdad got married. And so we aren't that close or anything just because of that. And then also they haven't been married for like years and years, so it's not like I grew up with her. So like I consider her an aunt still, obviously, but like we're not like super duper close buddy aunt niece, if that makes sense. So she texts me on Facebook, and she kind of was telling me that she was a little bit concerned about the relationship and everything. And she's like, I want to also just say that, you know, I'm going to, like, her husband and her will support me no matter what, but she just wanted to say what she'd been seeing, and she was praying about it a lot and just felt like that was on her heart to tell me. And now I had already been kind of rethinking things because this was a couple months after the youth conference, and more things have been coming up that I was like, this just seems weird, like it doesn't really seem right or whatever. But anyways, so she texted me, and it was, of course, the weekend of my bridal shower that she texted me. So this is great going into a bridal shower, second-guessing everything, right? But, so she texted me, and then I was like, okay, like, I'll think about it, I'll pray on it, like, but I appreciate you, like, you know, at least just telling me, because it was kind of like I was seeing that things weren't really what they were supposed to be, but I was afraid that I was engaged. The wedding was a couple months away. Like, I had already gotten a dress. We'd already started talking to, like, the cake people and everything. And so I'm sitting here, like, I can't back out of it at this point because we've already spent money on this thing. Like, I can't get out of this because not only have I promised him, I promised my family, like, this is my plan. Like, this will change my college plans. This will change so much if I call this off. And it was, again, I was also so afraid of him finding out that I was not, like, I didn't want him to be mad at me, because I was afraid of how he would react. Which, again, I also want to say, if you are in a relationship with someone and you are scared of how they'll react to you voicing concerns, that is not a good sign. But, so she texts me this, and I was like, thank you, like, I'll be praying on it, like, you know, like, I appreciate you telling me, whatever. And then as the end of the week into the weekend progresses and the bridal shower happens, I of course realized the morning of my bridal shower, which it wasn't like where I could just tell him there and like have my friends support me, because his mom and his sister were coming, and so I have to pretend this whole time that this is still happening, even though I know that I'm gonna have to call this off soon. But anyways, so this whole thing happens, and I'm also realizing that, like, I have stuff at his house already, and I know that if I tell him that I'm not, that the wedding is off, he's going to destroy my sentimental, more family stuff that's already in the house. And so I'm sitting here like, we need to figure out a way to get my stuff out of the house, but not have me have to go there alone and, figuring out all the stuff. Because I recognized at that point that the anger was a very strong thing. And so the time, within, I don't remember if it was the next day or a couple days after, because I don't remember exactly the days, or the days of the week, But anyways, so a little bit of time passes, and I tell my family, obviously, that this is what needs to happen. And so, thank God that I have brothers. I was amazed by the fact that they were willing to do this for me, and it wasn't like my stepdad told them. They offered, this was a optional thing for them to be able to do. But my brothers drove up an hour and a half ahead of what, when I did, to be able to go up to my grandparents' house, because my grandparents live up near where he and I were living, or we're going to be living, I should say, after we got married, where he was living, where I would have been moving into, to pick up my grandparents' Tahoe, and then we had our minivan to be able to get the stuff in the house out. And so they drove up ahead of me, and I was meeting with him in a public place, because my family was like, he has anger issues, you're not meeting alone, that's a bad idea. And so I was like, yeah, it is, so I'll do it in a public place, whatever. And so they drove up ahead of me, and they used the house key of mine that I had for the house and everything, and they dropped off some of the stuff of his that I had, and then got my stuff out of the house, because, I had, my dad passed away from cancer back in 2011, and so our church does this thing where they have prayer quilts they'll make for people that are sick, and my grandma is one of the ones that's, the pro people in that ministry of the church, and so she had made it, and everybody had signed it and everything, and so that was already up there, and a lot of other sentimental family things that I can't get back were up there. And so I was like, I need to get the stuff out of the house, because I know that it's not going to be good if I don't get them out. And so my brothers got that and a handful, a decent amount of other things out, and then they texted me before he had even gotten to the place where he and I were meeting, and they were like, we got it all out, mission complete in 7 minutes, and I'm like, oh shoot, okay, this means that I have to go through with this, because I'm internally panicking, because I'm really afraid of how he's going to react, because I know that it's not going to be good. Then, so he gets to the restaurant, and I'm sitting here, I'm almost an emotional wreck at this point. I'm just praying and holding the coffee that I got, because I was like, okay, the game plan, I have a $5 bill, I'll put the $5 bill on the table and leave, because I'll cover the coffee and I won't have to deal with anything else. So I have my coffee in my hand, and I'm just trying not to panic. And he comes in for a hug, and then I kind of hug him, but awkwardly, because I'm panicking about trying to get all these things off my chest and stuff. And then he sits down, and I kind of lay it out. And I tried to be as nice as I could, but at the same time be firm enough that he would know I was serious, and that there wasn't going to be any coming back from what happened. And so, my suspicions were confirmed. So I told him everything, and I gave him the ring back and everything. And it was also kind of funny, because when I gave him the ring back, he seemed offended, because that made it official. And then I was like, well, do you because it was his grandma's ring. But, so I gave him the ring back and everything, and his response to what I said, and I tried to be as nice as possible, but, again, make it firm enough that he would know that there was no room for, not argument, but there wasn't going to be another way to do it. It was going to be done. And he told me, amongst other things, that he was really angry. Or before this, he started bargaining and telling me that, because it was near his birthday when this happened, and the reason that I called it off when I did is that the next day was his family birthday party, and I didn't want to have to fake we were still going to be getting married then, because that would have been really unfair to him. And so, he started trying to bargain, and he was like, I was going to come in today and say, well, look, there's my birthday present, and we were going to go out for dinner and a movie and all this stuff. And it was really funny, because, and I journaled a lot about it immediately after it happened, but it was really funny that he said something like that, because for months leading up to that point, I don't remember him the last time that he had taken me out on a date before that. And I was always the one that was having to drive up to see him. He never came down to see me at that point. It was always me, always me, always me. And then when I would express, that I wanted him to put in some effort, he would get angry about it. And, another time that his anger was evident towards the end is he had come down to see me, and his vehicle was not in good shape, and I was house sitting at the time, and so I had to go back to play with the dogs that I was watching. And then I was going to do that, eat dinner, and then we were going to hang out again that evening. And he called me, and he was like really angry because something on his truck went wrong and whatever. And he knew he shouldn't have driven down there because he only bought it to be able to drive to work and stuff. And I'm sitting here like, thanks. So I mean nothing to you if you only bought it to drive to work, because I live an hour away, and we still aren't going to be living together for, at that point, like 3 or 4 months, so that means a lot, but, so he was, like, trying to bargain and say, oh, we'll make it better, marriage will fix this. Side note, if any of you are engaged and you are feeling in the same boat I was, marriage will only make your problems worse, it will not make it better. But, so he started out doing that, and then when he realized I was serious, there was no coming back from this, he said, I'm really mad at you right now, and I really want to cuss you out right now. And I'm going to go home and destroy everything you've ever given me. I know I am, so good for you for doing this in a public place. And I was already weeping at this point. That's the other ironic thing about this, is I was the one crying, even though I was the one breaking up with him. And I realized at that moment that I had been dating someone that was very angry still. And very well, frankly, probably that anger would have turned on me at some point, and I'm very thankful again that I got out of that relationship. And I'm sure that as time has gone on, because it's been a year now, I'm sure he's also had a lot of growth and realized that he did have anger still to work on and all that stuff. I am thankful that I don't have to be there to go up and down that emotional roller coaster all the time. But I do want to share that, though, because I feel like sometimes social media, which I'm going to actually portray why social media is great at that, but social media, I feel like, really is everybody's highlight reel, and we don't know the real story of what's going on. So, for example, like using this as an example, this was a picture from our engagement shoot. And, in the pictures and everything, we look really happy and in love because, that's kind of the mood you're going for in an engagement shoot. But that was the weekend of my senior prom, and that was the Sunday. Prom was that Saturday night, and I was really hurt and, like, not happy that day because for his senior prom and everything, we both got really dressed up and looked really nice, and for mine, he showed up in a wrinkled button-down t-shirt that was not fitting right and wrinkled, jeans, and a pair of Romeos. And that, again, just made me feel like, wow, you really care about me, like, I bought the tickets, I was paid for the gas, even though he drove my car, so my gas is the one being spent. I bought the tickets. Like, we didn't do flowers or corsages or anything that year, and, like, we didn't do pictures, and, like, I don't know, it really made me feel like I was not valued in the relationship. And yet in the pictures the next day, we looked really happy, and, like, there were no problems at all. And I think that's also the problem, because a lot of times I think that when people are in relationships that are not healthy, even if they are starting to see that it's not healthy, they're scared to say anything because, for one, they don't want to have the partner be mad or do anything or whatever, but they also they start to just feel like they're crazy, and that, if nobody else is saying anything, that this must just be normal, and I must just be overreacting to everything, and it's okay, and whatever. But I'm trying to figure out how to. I just really want to say that if any of you guys know people that are dating someone that you don't think is good for them, not good for them, if they're dating someone that you see red flags with, that you see whatever with, please tell them, because I can say, being in it, that I definitely would have been pissed had somebody told me that, but at the same time, I kind of, at the end, was feeling like I was the crazy one because I was seeing these things and I wasn't sure if anybody else was. And then after I called it off, all my friends were like, we're so glad that you did this, we saw all these things happening and we just didn't know how to tell you. And while I understand, because I'm a very stubborn person, admittedly, which is something that I have been working on, but, like, I can understand why they didn't want to tell me, because they didn't want me to then immediately go to defending him, because that's what you do when you're in a relationship that you know isn't healthy. You just immediately have to defend the partner because you know and see that it's bad, but you are so afraid of anybody else seeing it that you pretend like it's not. But where was I going with that? So anyways, if you see something, if you have a friend that's in a relationship that you know is not healthy, or if you are seeing things being displayed by one of your friend's partners that's not healthy, or by if you see your friend doing something that's not healthy to their partner, tell them. Because sometimes it's like, if my aunt had texted me, I don't know that I would have called it off because I was so afraid of, having the anger come out. And another example of the beauty of social media is, so this picture here, we were at a park in my area, and we had been kind of having an argument that day, like throughout the day, because again, we hang out, we would go on dates for like 8 hours at a time because we lived so far, and we had been kind of like arguing and like disagreeing all day and stuff. And then he was like, let's like go get a picture by the water and stuff. And so then I'm sitting here like, well, okay, if we're getting a picture, like I can't look like I'm not happy. So like we both looked happy in the picture and stuff. And like, I don't know, in retrospect, like it's kind of scary how like some of my friends saw it, because like they would hear, like I would talk to them about things, and so like they understood and they noticed things that I really should have noticed, but I was so afraid that I didn't want to see. But like pictures like that where people don't realize that you're not happy because you don't show them, or you don't tell them, or you aren't honest about what's happening in your life. So, and I also want to say, if there's anybody that is in any type of situation similar to I was, like if you ever want to talk, like I'm here, I've been through it. If you're debating on breaking up with somebody or calling off an engagement, whatever it might be, like let me know. I'm here, as like I'm an emotional being. I'm a mom to all my friends. Like I got you. But going back into the chapter, after sharing that, I just really want to highlight something that I want to highlight verses 4 through 8, like the start of verse 8, I should say, because I think this entire chapter is important and it's golden, but I really want to highlight that part because that is something that I'm really hard not to cry. That I also realized towards the end were not being displayed, and they should have been if it was the right person. I also should say that this person was not. They told me when we started dating that they were a Christian, but it was made fairly clear throughout the entire relationship that they really didn't care that much about God, and that they weren't really a Christian, but that they had said it so that I would date them. Almost, is what it seemed like, at least. So I also would encourage any of you that if you are trying to date and you are a Christian, do not date someone that is not a Christian or who is not pursuing God as much as you are, because it is not worth it at all. There are going to be a lot of disagreements. There's going to be a lot of not healthy things happening. So please, 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 please learn from my mistakes and don't do it. But delving into verse 4, it says that love is patient and kind, and it does not envy or boast. I think that with this, it's important for us to remember that when we are trying to find the person that God has for us, not only do we need to display these qualities of love towards them, but we need to have them display these qualities towards us. And I think that's another thing, especially if you guys are single right now, or if you are getting ready to, like, if you're engaged and you're planning a wedding, whatever, make sure that you are really embodying these qualities, because this is what's going to make any type of relationship you're in just much better. You need to be patient and kind to people. You need to not be controlling and manipulative and use them to get what you want. You need to always put their interests first. You don't envy or boast. You aren't boastful about how you are doing this and that, and that your partner's only doing this. Like, you're boastful in the sense that you're proud to call your partner, and if you're not proud to call your partner, there's something wrong there too. But trust me, I've been there, but I've also been in a relationship where I feel so lucky to have a partner like the one I have, because they challenge me to be a better person. They challenge me to grow. They challenge me to grow in my faith, which is the most important part. But it also does not envy, which I think is kind of where jealousy comes in, because a little bit of jealousy in a relationship, I suppose, could be healthy, but at the same time, you should trust your partner enough that they're not going to do you wrong and you're not going to do them wrong. Jealousy is kind of a double-edged sword, because love is jealous. Like, God's love is very jealous for us. He only wants us to love him, but at the same time, if you're in a relationship and the person is overly jealous and controlling of you because of that jealousy, that's not healthy, and that is not from God. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. And I again think that this is really important. I have seen this both in my own relationships, but also in my friends when they're dating somebody that doesn't really care about them, but they don't see it. And it's heartbreaking, and I'm saying it's heartbreaking not only because I have to watch them go through it, but having gone through it myself, it is not healthy. I mean, because you start to second guess yourself and think that you're crazy that you want these things, and then you're like, oh, well, maybe I just want too much, maybe that's never going to happen because, like, I just want too much out of someone, but that's not the case. Like, I think the reason why I focus so much on why it's important to have a partner that pursues you and vice versa is because that means that they're putting you first. It means that they care about you and that they value you and that they cherish you and they want to see you succeed and they want to see you thriving. Whether or not that means that they're thriving. They want to make sure that you're the happiest that you can be because they love you and they want that for you. That's a selfless love. It doesn't insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful because it has to sacrifice. Love is self-sacrificing. Love is so good, and I mean, if you look at the love God has for us, that's a display of how we should be loving each other. Obviously, we need to love God more than anybody else, but you know what I'm getting at. Verse 6, it does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And I think that last part is again really important because not only is it rejoicing in the truth, but it's rejoicing in being righteous. Because something that I have noticed, because I have gone on dates, admittedly, with a lot more people than I probably should have after breaking up with Bob, and that was a crutch of mine for a little while, and I'm learning that was a crutch of mine, and to just fully trust God with it because God ultimately has the best things for us in His plan. But having gone on dates or meeting people or whatever, a lot of the Christian guys nowadays, and even Christian women, they expect that sex before marriage is okay because that's what society tells them. I challenge you that if you think that, I want you to look at the Bible, I want you to look at Scripture. I want you to challenge your partner if they say that, to have them look at Scripture because it is not biblical at all. The Bible talks extremely strongly against that, and yet so many Christians now say that it's okay because society changed their view on it. So, I'm not going into that today, but that is something else that you need to make sure you are firm in so that you don't get shaken and that you don't get weakened in that. Because that is something that I have had many guys tell me is the central part of a relationship. And if you aren't having sex, then are you even really dating? And it's like, what does the Bible say, Bobby, Johnny, Larry? Like, come on. But that is something that is so important and is so vital because that is how you get people in relationships when they're unequally yoked. They don't like each other, but they feel guilty, so they stay. That is how so many unhealthy relationships start, and then people wonder why we have so many single-parent households or so many people that are unhappy and unfulfilled in their marriages because sex has been made so cheap in modern society, and it's so sad to see, but at the same time, the reason why it's been made cheap is because it is such a good thing. Satan knows that it's a good thing. He knows what God created it for, and so he then therefore must taint it to make it his own so that people can't enjoy it in the way it's supposed to be. So off of that tangent, love bears, believes, hopes, and endures all things. This, I think, is one of the centerpieces of love because love doesn't make sense. Love is staying with someone even if it's not the best thing for you. Now, obviously, I'm saying this after. I'm not saying if they're not a Christian, you stay with them, because that is not, no, don't do that, unless you're married. There's different rules for that, but what I'm saying is, it's sticking with someone even if they're not the happiest person ever, even if they're struggling in life, even if they are sick, even if they are going through financial hardships. It's sticking with them through thick and thin, through sickness and health until death do you part. That is something that is so lost in our society today, and I hate it. I hate it. And I know that the reason that it's been lost is because the devil knows that it's good, and he therefore has to take it away. And I could go on another tangent on this, but I'm not going to because this is a really long video, so I'm sorry. But I also think it's important that love never ends. Because, I've seen friends of mine who are not Christians go through person after person after person looking for fulfillment that they're never going to find in a person. And you can try your best, obviously. That's all we can do. We can try and pray that they'll recognize that at some point. But it's important for us to remember that love never ends because love is God. God is love. That's what I should say. Sorry. And his love for us never ends. And so when we truly, truly love and care for someone, you know, you might go your separate ways. They might pass on. They might, who knows. But there's always that part of you that loves them because it doesn't really end. And I think that love changes and takes different forms in different ways and things, but I think it's important for us to remember that if we're dating someone, but we're only dating them because of what they can offer us, or we're only dating them because of how they make us feel, that's not love. If you're dating someone and you're only dating them because it's comfortable and you've been dating for months or years or whatever, but you aren't dating them because you want to see them succeed in everything they do and you want to be able to cheer them on when times are going well and comfort them in times when things are not so good, it's not love. And I really would challenge each of you to try and embody verses 4 through start of verse 8 and make sure that, you know, whoever you're with embodies those things. And if they are, but you're not, challenge yourself. And if you are and they're not, challenge them. And I think the thing that so many of us forget is that people don't really change all that much. We can want the best of things for someone, but they have to want those things for themselves in order for there to be any change. And this is a really long video, so I'm sorry for that. But I really wanted to share my perspective on this because I am a very feeling person, admittedly, and I've watched so many of my dogs cracking me up. Anyway, sorry. I've watched so many of my friends in relationships that I know they can do better. And I've been in relationships where it's like that too, but I'm afraid. And I've seen marriages where it's obvious that they don't put each other first, and it's heartbreaking. And I want each of you guys to know what to look for and what to embody. And obviously, above all other things, you need to be strong in your faith and have a strong relationship with God first, because it's through that every good thing happens in life. But I guess I wanted to share today because I want you to know that if you're experiencing any of the stuff that I have, or similar, or you have the mindset that people only say that God is good when they've gone through only good things, to remember that everybody has a story, you know? I mean, I don't know. I'm really scared to upload this, if I'm honest, because I've definitely grown a lot in the past year, but I still am afraid of hurting people, and I'm really scared to put this up because I don't want anyone to get hurt by it. But at the same time, this is my story too, and I feel like this is going to help someone. And if it only helps one person, that's all I can hope for. But yeah, I know this video is a little deeper than we normally get and a lot more personal than we normally get. But if you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like on the video because it really helps, especially because it's so long. Sorry. And if you did stick around for this whole thing, firstly, thank you. And yeah, thank you. That's all I can say. But if you guys are new here, or if you are an older viewer but you haven't subscribed yet, please feel free to subscribe. And I will be getting back into more daily content on the Instagram blog. I actually just went through another breakup recently, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It just, life circumstances changed, which is okay. And there are no hard feelings at all, but I just needed to not have to try and crank out content on top of school, on top of church, on top of all the other commitments I already have. And so, yeah, but I really, really, really hope that you guys, especially I mean, I know we're like a month into the year, but I really hope that you guys grow into who you are in Christ, because it is something that it is so life-changing, and I hope that it helps you guys, because I'm not even going to say that. I know that it will help you guys if you keep growing into your faith and keep pushing more and more and more into God and into Christ and who you were created to be. And God is so good, you guys. Like, I cannot imagine my life had I gone through with that. And wow, he's so good, you guys. So seriously, spend time with him. Go to church, make new friends, spend time in your Bible, spend time in his presence, spend time worshiping, spend time praying. I mean, really, I know it's all dorky Christian stuff that you hear everywhere, but seriously, it is life changing. Like, wow. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and as usual, if you leave this video knowing nothing else, I hope you know how loved and cherished and precious you are to God that created you. And I will see you guys next time. I don't know, I hope you guys get something from this, because I do not normally get this personal, and I'm really proud that I didn't cry, because I usually cry when telling that, so awesome sauce. But yes, anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video, and yeah, see you guys next time.